Good evening. Welcome to Gridiron Gurus for the Kennebec Journal and Morning Sentinel. I am Travis Lazarczyk, alongside, as always, Drew Bonifant. Drew, how you doing?
Doing pretty well. We got one more week to go, so let's go at it.
Yes, this is our final show of the season. We have state championships coming up this weekend, and our guest this week is Cony head coach and frequent guest and friend of the show, BL Lippert. Coach, thanks for being here.
I'd rather be preparing for the state championship, but this is a nice consolation prize, I guess.
All right. We'll start out before we get to the four 11-man games by looking at some things that kind of come up during the postseason. Drew, you'd mentioned to me earlier, something that kind of struck you is kind of coaching adjustments from in the playoffs after a regular season loss to a team to kind of come back and get them.
Yeah, that seemed to be a theme for the games this past week, and at least the games that I was at. I saw Lisbon beat Winthrop Monmouth Halldale in the Class D final, and then we saw MCI beat Winslow. And that was a storyline for both those games, I thought, because going into Class D game, kind of expected Lisbon to do their drawn-in, run heavy, a lot of stuff, power running game, and they come up against Winthrop and they spread it out from the start. And then that was the game plan adjustment. Once the game actually got going, then they started to actually throw the ball because they realized that Winthrop was putting a lot of guys in the box, leaving a lot of man coverage on the outside. And then in the Class C game, Winslow comes in with a really good running attack, and Tom Bertrand, the MCI coach, told his kind of conceded the ground game a little bit. Rob Clark had well over 100 yards rushing,
right,
but he took away the passing options, and he told his defensive backs to don't get sucked into the run, stay out, be disciplined, and be back there on the receivers. And as a result, Colby Palmer had nobody to throw to, and it really kind of made their offense one-dimensional. So I thought that was a good case of coaches not necessarily sticking 100% with what had been working all season, but to recognize that I might need to change things up a little bit. I might need to be a little more flexible and kind of diversify how we do things. And I think that the two teams, Winslow and Winthrop, were kind of taken aback, maybe thrown for a loop a little bit with those adjustments. And Coach, I want to get your take. What's kind of the dividing line between dancing with what brought you, but also make sure you kind of read the game as it's going?
Yeah, it's really tough as a coach, especially if you're the higher seed. Last year, we beat Brunswick to end the regular season. Then we got a bye. They played Brewer. We played them in the semifinal. And we didn't have the exact same game plan, but we ran for a big number against them and threw pretty well against them and held them to 85 or so yards total for the game. And so that, as a coach, is kind of like, and we knew Brunswick was pretty good. And so you're a little nervous going into those circumstances because they're going to make some changes. They switch quarterbacks for the most part. The kid that's playing now, that was kind of one of his first starts was last year in the semifinal. Defensively, they got one guy back, Jack Harvey, who's really a star in the middle of their defense this year. Mm-hmm. So just a couple small tweaks there. They brought a little bit more edge pressure against us, and it's just got a different feel to it. So if you're in the position of Lisbon, let's say, where they had not a lot of success in the regular season, you have to do something, right? You can't go in with the exact same game plan and say this time it's going to work.
Yeah.
So as the coach of the opposite team, you sit there and think, okay, what can they do? Are they going to get in the spread and throw it 60 times? Are they going to get in the spread and run the quarterback? So it's kind of a guessing game all week long, and that's why the first drive of the game you look and go, okay, they're in the shotgun, okay, they're and you don't know. It could be any generally with Brunswick, you know what they're going to do, but a lot of teams are pretty varied in their approach. And I didn't see the MCI game, but I know the big kid, the Buzzell kid, was playing a little bit more running back than maybe he had, and so you have to change the game plan up, or they're going to get the same result. And those, it's also a sign of good coaching. Coach Cates and obviously Tom Bertrand, in my estimation, is one of the top 5, 6, 8 coaches in the state. He probably doesn't end up on a lot of people's lists, given the fact he's at MCI and it's not all that well known, despite the success he's had. But he does a really good job getting his kids prepared, first of all, believing, and then coming up with a scheme that on the outside somebody might say, well, that might not work, but you got to do something, or else Winslow's is going to beat you again. And he did a great job, and he seems to do that a lot in the postseason.
Yeah, and that's a good distinction to point out, was that those are both rematches of games that those teams that ended up winning those games lost the first time. I think MCI maybe lost the first game by 24 points.
61-37.
Yeah.
They were ahead 19-14 at the half, and then Winslow's offense did what they did to a lot of teams. And you mentioned that MCI really made a point to stop the pass. They were gashed for 3 long touchdown passes in that second half. When Winslow kind of took control of that game.
And Winthrop Monmouth Halldale won that first matchup against Lisbon 49-14. So definitely those teams were recognizing what you were saying, which is, it's one thing if you lose by 7 in overtime or something, you might say, okay, well, if you just execute a little better. But they were probably more incentivized to think, we gotta change it. We gotta do something because the proof is in the pudding that this didn't work the first time.
Yeah, and conversely, if you win those games by those margins, it would stand to reason you'd keep the same game plan.
Right.
So the team that lost is like, okay, we know what they're going to do. They're going to come out and try to run the ball if it was Winthrop, whatever it would be. And there's really no reason for Winslow to say, well, we got to really change our game plan this time around because we only scored 61 the first time. Yeah. So like I think it's not an advantage because theoretically you lost by 24. You maybe weren't the better team, but like you have to make some changes. They don't know what you're going to do, and you know what they're going to come out and do because you'd be crazy to say Winslow comes out in the spread all of a sudden. Maybe if Winslow was playing a team they lost by 60, they might come out in the spread and try to just change it up. But you know Winslow, what they're going to do, given the success they had all year. So there's not a lot of game plan prep that way. It's just can we come out and stop them this time around and defend the pass and try to limit the run a little bit. So it's an interesting time anytime you play two times in the Marina Cook and Mount Airy. It was a third time. I'm not sure I've really ever seen that in high school football that I can remember. So that's an added layer too. That it's hard to beat a good team three times is usually a basketball saying, but this time it played out in 8-man.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the flip side of that, I would think, is you might, as a coach, you might be worried about overcoaching and thinking like, okay, if something has been working, you've been you're 8-1, you've been running, and you've been using a power run style all season. It's been working for you, and you think, oh no, I need to change and go a little more towards the pass. Well, now if you look at a game and you don't throw it all that well and you end up losing the game, maybe you would be kicking yourself and thinking, why'd I change what works? So
I think also teams that get a bye really have that because like coaches are just by nature always thinking of whatever it is the next thing, and so when you have a bye, which we had last year, and did Winthrop have a bye this year or no?
They did.
Mm-hmm. Like I think in that bye week sometimes you get a little antsy and maybe you go, okay, we're going to have we've before put in the package where we're under center, power eye, just as a change-up. Hey, we're not being, you can't get a snap, whatever. Let's go on the power eye. And it's fun. The kids kind of have fun with it that off week. We're not playing anybody. But you start kind of spending time on stuff that you maybe will never use and probably will never use. But you just get that extra week, and it feels like you have unlimited time. And it just makes your mind race a little bit like you wish you had a game that week, and instead you're just like practicing stuff that maybe in the long run you're never going to use. Mm-hmm. So, and we haven't taken a snap under center since 2008. So we practice it, once or twice a year, and maybe eventually we'll run it. But to this point, it's just been a waste.
In 2013, on the way to your state championship, you guys, I believe, lost to Brunswick in a shootout regular season. Go down there for the conference championship game and beat them. What were some of the adjustments maybe you guys made the second time around? I mean, having a Fitzpatrick candidate and Ben Lucas at quarterback helps.
Well, he threw for like 450 in the first game and 5 or 6 touchdowns.
It was
and
a
we
shootout.
Lost. Yeah, we lost 54-44 or something. That was week 3. So that's the other thing, too, is when did you play him? Like last year we played Brunswick week 8 and then in the playoffs. In week 3, a lot had transpired. Injuries had happened. And, we, believe it or not, we committed to throw the ball more in the playoff game. Like we thought if we ran the ball, it really wasn't in our forte. They brought 6 against 5 linemen almost every time. And sometimes we just run the ball just to kind of break tendencies a little bit. Mm-hmm. And in that game, we just said, I don't know if we ran it more than 3 or 4 times that I can remember. So we just said, hey, we're going to throw it on first down, second down, 3rd and 1. But, we're just going to throw it pretty much every play rather than, trying to outsmart ourselves and run it to throw them off. And they know what we were doing. And defensively, we didn't play a great game in the final. It was 48-38 was the final. But we were able to make a few stops. We slanted to strength a little bit more, looked at the numbers and thought, well, geez, they really like running behind that guy. But like I said, the time between those 2 games was pretty significant, probably 2 months, in real time. So we didn't, spend too much time looking at the original tape. We looked at maybe the last couple. They'd played Kennebunk the last game of the season, so we looked at those, and by that point we were, 95% pass, and we just kind of stuck with that game plan, and we're happy to work that night and work the next Friday night too. Yeah,
you got to figure your offense can score. It's just a matter of, like you said, getting those stops. Just all you need is a couple.
Yeah, that's it. A couple stops, and I think we punted the first time, and then it was like 7 or 8 straight possessions where both each team scored back and forth. So it was like 28-24 at the half, and then we pulled away in the second half. But yeah, it's playoff football as we've experienced. I remember
it was a cold, long night.
Yeah, it was cold for sure.
State game that year against Kennebunk. We've talked about this in the past, but it was probably the first half, so your worst offensive half of the season. What kind of adjustments did you guys make in the second half to pull out and get that win?
It's so funny because I've had so many people that have said, geez, good halftime adjustments, coach, because it was 9-0 at the half, and then we scored 30 in the second half, but we made no halftime adjustments. In fact, we go in and we had guys, somewhat open. You're playing Kennebunk, who, to my estimation, was maybe the best defense in the state that year. So if we had a guy open by a yard, we felt like then he was open, and Ben we walk in at halftime, Ben Lucas, our quarterback, has the whole team up and said, I played the worst half of my career. I promise you I'm going to play great in the second half and we're going to win. And so I had my whiteboard ready to go, and I went, no, let's just stick with what we did. I think Ben's ready. He recognizes we had some guys open, and so we really didn't make a lot. Maybe a couple defensively, but offensively we just kind of stuck to the game plan. And, we go into a game with a play sheet of 28 plays, so we aren't really adding a lot. We might go, that's not going to work. We might be down to like 15 by the end of it.
Sure.
And that game, we didn't make a ton of adjustments at halftime offensively. We just, Ben was almost superhuman in the second half, throwing for 315 or something in the second half. So he was the difference in the second half.
And that's probably an important thing to consider when it comes to game planning and getting ready for a game is, did this not work because this won't work against them what we did, or did this not work because we just didn't play well enough? I mean, you could lose doing something by 14 points, but no, that's not that's on us more than it was. More it was about them.
I mean, that's what coaches do, and we just lost Mount Blue going for 2, and everyone will point to going for 2 is maybe the decision, but we had 5 turnovers, 2 turnovers on down. I look at the first drive, and we called option on consecutive plays on 3rd and 3 and 4th and 2. Not a play we run a ton at Cony, but if they're playing a certain defense, we're going to run it and trust our guys to block in space. So I would question that call even more than the going for 2. And so as a coach, you just look back and there's so many ifs, ands, or buts. But at the end of the day, you trust the game plan. You got to trust the game plan. If you go into it thinking this maybe won't work, will it work? We need a second game plan. I've just never had a lot of success saying, okay, here's our second game plan if the first one doesn't work. You got to go in saying this is going to work. Kids can sense that about you too. It's like, let's try this, and that usually doesn't go very well.
Confidence goes a long way.
Absolutely, no question.
It's a little like I said to make an analogy to different sports. It's like in golf where they say, don't go up there thinking like, I think this is the right club.
Yeah, you better be committed.
You better be thinking like, this is the right club. I'm going to swing it the right way, and this is going to be the right shot.
If it doesn't work out, then you got to go, all right, I'm going to do it again. And like Tin Cup, you're going to keep hitting them in the water until maybe you find the hole.
Exactly.
All right, well, let's look at the 4 11-man state games beginning in Class C on Friday night at the University of Maine in Orono. We have Leavitt versus MCI. Coach, I know you've been on the Leavitt bandwagon
I'm
since
glad you
seeing
recognize that.
A lot of guys in the 7-on-7 leagues.
And, 7-on-7 in our camp. They are loaded.
What can you tell me about this Leavitt team?
I've talked to people who said, Leavitt, what do you think MCI will do? I don't know what you do defensively, to be quite honest with you. I talked to the Herman coach at the Lobster Bowl, and they played in week 1. I said, well, they got 2 6'5" tight ends. They've got the Calder brothers, who are both 4'5", 5 in the 40. They got Mark Herman, who barely plays for them, or barely gets the ball, who would be most teams' best wide receiver. Yeah. They got 2 or 3 running backs. Wyatt Hathaway, coach's kid, running the show. An offensive line that's big and physical. So I just don't know. You got to take away something. I know Coach Bertrand right now is probably practicing. Whatever it is, he's gonna have a game plan. I don't know what the decision is. Do you try to take away the run, and the jet sweep obviously is a huge part of that. But in order to do that, you got to maybe roll corners up, and that takes them out of the pass coverage. So you got your hands full trying to defend that offense. And I knew this summer, I just saw, I don't know a lot of them personally. I do now, but they show up at our camp and they're running around with a white helmet on. I'm like talking to Mike. I go, is that another one of your guys? Because there's a few schools with white helmets. He goes, oh yeah, that's ours. I'm like, who is that? Oh, he's a sophomore. He won't play for us this year, but he'll be pretty good down there. They just have talent coming out everywhere. So they're a really talented football team. And, like I said, Coach Bertrand's going to have something ready for them. And I haven't seen MCI play much. I saw a little bit on TV one day, but he's big and physical. The friend kid I know has a ton of starts under his belt, so they'll be ready to play. He's just got his hands full because Leavitt can beat you so many different ways.
I wonder if the plan there is just to find one thing or one person and just say, rather than say, okay, we're going to try to be good in these different areas, say we're going to take that away and force them to kind of play left-handed a little bit, even though their left hand is pretty good, as you're saying.
And actually, the matchup, so Mike Hathaway was the Lobster Bowl for the West in 2014 when I coached, and Tom Bertrand was the defensive coordinator for the East. So I was on the staff of the East, and so our focus really was to take away jet sweep, because I guess just Mike's staple. They get the ball on the going sideline to sideline, you find a crease and you're gone. So our focus that week was to take away jet sweep, and we had some success doing that. You're going to give up some stuff vertical in the pass game, but I guess what you hope is that they're so committed to their game plan. We're going to run jet sweep. It's worked all year long. You can limit that, get them into a few 3rd and longs because they aren't expecting you to do that. And then you just hope they throw in a complete play. Or you change the coverage dramatically on 3rd and long probably. And you hope that Leavitt just doesn't find a rhythm. If you just let them run jet sweep and then their fakes off it and their pass, they're just going to shred you. So take away something, as you're saying, and just hope they are uncomfortable not having that kind of safety net to fall into every time. So that's got to be the plan. Easier said than done. But that's got to be what Coach Bertrand's planning right now.
Yeah. Leavitt's, we know this offense is so potent, but their defense kind of gets undersold a little bit because this is a team that hasn't given up more than 2 touchdowns in a game since week 2 or 3 of the season. And, I'm sure if we went back and looked, that was probably, a late, JV versus JV kind of score, which isn't as indicative of what Leavitt's defense can be. I mean, we talk about a lot of the Fitzpatrick candidates from Southern Maine, but maybe, Cam Jordan from Leavitt as a two-way threat might be a guy who should be getting consideration.
Yeah, he's the best defensive player I've seen on film this year. Like, he's, legit 6'4", 6'5", 220. I know Maine's talked to him a little bit. I'm not sure where he fits in up there. He'd have to add some weight to his body. But he is a physical, mean, athletic, like D-end. And, he plays usually, if I'm watching it right, he usually plays a weak side defensive end. So he's coming without a tight end. He's really got a short corner to get to the quarterback. He's got 17, 18 sacks because teams are behind against Leavitt having to throw. So, Wells had just no opportunity to even get the passes. That's not what Wells does. So they make them uncomfortable. And then here comes Cam Jordan on all your, waggle game. And he's just a real handful to
he's
block.
definitely a guy that MCI is going to have to account for because they do like to throw the ball. They've got 3 really good receivers in Dominic Wilson, Will Russell, and Nason Berthollet.
Yeah.
And Ryan Friend can throw or run,
No doubt.
third-year starter quarterback. But if a kid like Cam Jordan's in your face the whole night, it's going to be up to guys like Harrison Seitz and some of these linemen at MCI to keep him out of the backfield.
That's a good point because Leavitt's defense is definitely underappreciated. Everyone talks about the offense and the coach's kid throwing for X, Y, and Z, but it's that defense that's 3 and out, and then you get the ball, maybe Leavitt scores, maybe they don't, but 3 and out, they just haven't given up many long drives all year long. And that's pretty comforting as a coach when if we don't score, we can find our rhythm. They're going to be just a really tough out because they do everything well, special teams, and they got 15 head coaches on the Leavitt staff. Mike's a friend of mine, so I can rib him both. Like 5 former head coaches on his staff somehow. So they're well coached and they've got great talent. So it's a tough matchup, but if anyone can pull it off, we've seen in recent years, it's Tom Burton.
Yeah, and it might just come down to maybe not a game plan thing, just saying, like, where's he going to get players to play? Guys like Harrison Seitz and Bryce Bustle on the line to say, we're going to need these guys to play the game of their careers. In order
a little bit of luck.
Shot.
I mean, Kennebunk turned it over 5 times, and, against us, that helps. That sometimes helps as well, so people forget that.
Yeah, I mean, MCI's got a tradition of coming up big in these kind of games.
Certainly does, yeah. I mean, we saw it last week. We were talking about, we've been talking the last several weeks about how Winslow feels like this unstoppable force and just scoring points left and right, one of the top scoring teams in the state, regardless of class, and who in the world could stop them before they get to the state game. And MCI not only beat them, they handled them. So, I don't think anything we're saying about Leavitt is wrong, but maybe MCI is brings a little more to the table than it might look at if you look at the records and everything.
Yeah, they're certainly both going to be well coached. It should be an interesting game on Friday night.
That's
in
a
Orono.
theme through all these games. As I look at your list, those are 8 darn good head football coaches, and that's that's true.
That's how you play when it's dark.
That's right. And they've done a really nice job.
All right, well, let's go on to the Saturday games that are going to all be at Fitzpatrick Stadium in Portland. We'll start with Class D, which is the middle game. On Saturday, we have Lisbon coming off their upset win over Winthrop Monmouth Halldale versus a Bucksport team, Drew, that kind of everybody who had their eye on the Little 10 could kind of see coming.
Yep. I mean, it's kind of an opposite story in that regard. I don't think anybody had Lisbon coming out of that same region with Winthrop Monmouth Halldale there waiting, while everybody kind of had Bucksport eyed from week 1 or week 2. It's also kind of an unknown thing here because Bucksport has the Class D North schedule, so you just wonder how they're going to be able to hold up against a team that was tested against probably what's been a stronger region in D South. I mean, we saw Bucksport play Oak Hill, and it was probably Bucksport's toughest game of the year. They were down 14-0, and Oak Hill ended up being a team that wasn't up there with Winthrop and with Lisbon and everything. So there's that factor, but. I mean, they're good. They're big. They're big. They're a big physical team. Stacey said it. Oak Hill said the biggest team he faced all year. He faced in a long time. So
they've got a line that's as big as some of the schools in A and B. Jackson Gross, their running back, seems to be just a load. I don't know if you've had a chance to see that.
I don't know a lot about that. I saw somebody posted a video of their right tackle who's like a 3-time state champion heavyweight. He's just mauling people in the run game. So like that, I assume they run behind him a little bit. That'd be my plan if I was calling plays. So I know they're really good from the beginning. And like I said, in the summer at the Lobster Bowl, Dexter's coach was there, Andy Shore, and he goes, Bucksport's probably the favorite up here, and they proved to be all year.
Yeah, but I mean, going back to what we started the thing with, I give Chris Cates, the Lisbon coach, pretty good shot in this to find a way around it. I mean, he's not going to beat his head against the wall and just run straight into that size and wait for things to turn his favor. He might go spread out again and give the ball to Seth Lehman around the edge and force Bucksport to be fast enough to stay with Lisbon.
Yeah. Do you think he gave Stayson Doucette at Oak Hill a call? Stayson, an old Lisbon guy himself, and said, "Hey, what'd you guys do to be ahead of him for most of the game?"
I would be surprised. Stayson was in decent spirits after that game, and I heard him say to Chris Gates as they walk off the field, "Go win next week." Go, and maybe every coach says that, but you got the sense that there was probably more of a bond, more of some tighter connection.
They coached together for many years under long-time Lisbon coach Dick Monahan, so there's a bond there.
Yeah, I would think so.
All right, let's look at Class B. Marshwood and Brunswick, again. We've been here before, seen this movie. Coach, you guys didn't play Brunswick this year in your conference, but do they have a shot with Marshwood this year?
I think they do. I really do. I think they can throw the football. That's been the thing with Brunswick. Some years they're so one-dimensional, and this year they haven't had to really throw the ball very often because they just have run it down everyone's throat. But everyone focuses on Owen Richardson, who's one of the better players. As we look at Fitzy candidates, he's really up there. And Mitch Leinert is a legit track and field speed guy. Getting the ball
gets
on
the edge,
he's gone. There's nobody catching him. So. I actually think they maybe this sounds crazy, they might be a little more athletic than Marshwood. Marshwood's got, the quarterback's a big, going to Maine to pitch, right? The Cavalry kid from Marshwood. I mean, he's a big kid, but pure athleticism. Brunswick might be a little smaller and quicker, but Marshwood is just so physical. And the thing that stood out to me is, they physically handled TA. Thornton Academy. They really stood up to him, outgained him like 500 to 300 loss going for 2, and not getting that. I know what that's like.
Sure.
But, it's... that stood out. To play with TA and kind of get in a shootout's one thing, but to really control the line of scrimmage like they did. And I don't know how many people watched the game on Munzing Media, but that TA Marshwood game week 2 was just must see TV. Yeah. It was awesome.
Right.
Because it's
fantastic.
It's been the question everyone's wondered. Can Marshwood compete with these A teams? And the A people are like, no.
Game of the year in the state.
Yeah, by far. I doubt any of these are going to top it. It'd be great if they did. Mm-hmm. So Marshwood proved. But I think Brunswick can hang in there. And what Coach Cooper has always done, and it's frustrated me, is he gets those kids believing. Like he just gets them riled up and said nobody respects us, and he plays that card as well as anybody in the state. And he's also, by the way, one of the best coaches in the state. He's proven that. 5 state championship appearances here in a row. I think is that true?
In 6 years.
5 and 6 years.
Scout Egan kind of interrupted it one year.
That's right. So he's done a great job with that program, and so those kids all have the experience of being there, and maybe that helps as well. Marshwood's been there as well, but it's one thing for Marshwood to play or Scout Egan who hadn't been there. It's hard to play against a team that's got that much experience. And Brunswick's been there. And this year they'll have Owen Richardson, who didn't play last year. So I think they got a chance. I think more so than what I've heard from other people predicting 48-0 again. I just don't think that's the case.
You mentioned the passing game. I was talking to Noah Goddard, that Brunswick quarterback, after the game last week, and he was joking that, his job's so easy. He said he describes himself as a guy who hands the ball off and plays safety.
Yes.
But with running backs like Owen Richardson or Mitch Leinert, it's easy. But they can throw the ball. On a third down, he completed a pass and he threw a touchdown pass. So
I wouldn't be surprised to see Brunswick throw the ball 20 times this week. I'm telling you that right now. He can do it. Trayvon McKenzie is one of the most athletic tight ends you'll find in the state. He can really, really get down the field.
And a very good defensive end, too.
Yes, very good. Yeah, he's a nightmare to block. So they haven't needed it, and one thing that always surprises me about Brunswick is that they don't test the pass game. I'm surprised they don't one game during the year go, we're going to just throw it 40 times. We know we're going to win. Whoever we're playing, I won't name a team. Yeah. Sometimes it's Cony, but we're just going to throw it, every play, and just to work on it for this game, because most games they can hand the ball on a trap and just beat everybody. So it'll be interesting to see if they've developed enough of a passing game. I think they have. And the Goddard kid's a really good athlete, pitcher in baseball. So I think they've got a chance, and that wouldn't surprise me if they said, hey, we've lost to them a bunch trying to run trap and buck sweep. That's their offense. We're just mirroring it. Let's come out and throw it 20 times with Goddard and put him on the edge and see what happens. That would be what I would do if I was Coach Gill.
Yeah, that was a good point. I was going to say that might be kind of the talk about game plan changes and everything. Would Brunswick ditch something that has worked against every other team they've played? And go in there saying, well, because Marshwood's going to try to take away that power running,
of course,
that power running element. So would Brunswick do a complete reversal of what's just works game in and game out for them and try something new, or would they be hesitant to go away from that and just say, I know it's tough, but we got to do what we do.
Yeah, in the summer they play 7-on-7 with us down at Leavitt, and they're in the gun, and they're not going to do it in the regular season, but they've got some pretty good athletes that look pretty good in the spread. Mm-hmm. So maybe this is the year they were like, hey, if we get to the state game, we've got this package we haven't unveiled yet. I'm sure it's something they've got up their sleeve just in case it's 14-0 in the first quarter. The Patriots go tempo, and that's their change-up if they're starting to struggle. Maybe Brunswick says, hey, we got this package. We haven't used it yet. We haven't want to show it, but Owen Richardson, Liner, all those guys out wide and throw it around. That'd be fun for us in the north to see because Brunswick's never really done that or had to do it for the most part. So that could be. I don't expect that, but I'd be pleasantly surprised to see somebody from black and orange in the gun.
You got to think Cooper would be pretty tempted to see what it would look like if he gets the ball in Linert's hands through the air 8-10 times. And just get that speed and space.
Yeah, they got some guys in Marshwood secondary that are really good too. There's no doubt. But that's the advantage for Brunswick, I think, is in the skill, if there is an advantage, or where they're close. I think at the line of scrimmage, I think Marshwood's just maybe the best in the state, regardless of class. Brunswick's okay, obviously, but I think that the skill kids are pretty close to equal, and maybe take advantage of that.
Yeah. All right. Finally, the last game, actually the first game of the day on Saturday, but the last game we'll talk about is the Class A game between Bonnie Eagle and Thornton. Bonnie Eagle, another Cooper, Kevin, coaching the Scots. He has never lost a state championship game, either as a player at Lawrence High School back in his day or as the coach at Bonnie Eagle. Is this the year that run ends against a really good Thornton team?
I don't think so. I'm taking Bonnie Eagle. And I point out, I've never lost a state championship game. I'm only 1-0, but he's 6-0, so it's a little bit different, I guess. What do you say? I didn't realize.
Perfect's perfect.
I read that in the paper. I went, he's never lost. I know he's won 6. You figure you're 6-3, Tom Brady or something, but he's 6-0. That's pretty good. Yeah. That's Joe Montana if we're comparing quarterbacks. But anyway, 4-0, but no loss. Yeah. I think Bonnie Eagle's got. I watched the regular season game. And the biggest advantage TA has is they have very few guys that play both ways. It showed up against Marshwood, and it showed up against Bonnie Eagle in the fourth quarter, whereas Maturo and Sean Brilliant, all those guys play both ways for Bonnie Eagle. They don't have the depth that TA has. But at this point in the year, you'd like to think your guys are in shape and have played a lot of four-quarter games. They're ready to. They're prepared for that. It's not going to be 75 degrees on a Saturday at TA. So I think Bonnie Eagle with Kevin Cooper getting a full week. I emailed him today. I actually emailed him on Monday. He got back to me today and said, sorry, I got my blinders on a little bit this week. So he's a friend of mine from camps in the summer, so I just wishing him luck. And I know he's going to have him as prepared as anyone. And he's 6-0 for a reason. So I think they pull it off. I know I'm probably in the minority there, but I think that they saw in the first go around that in the fourth quarter they were worn out, and they just TA literally ran power at him like the entire fourth quarter. I can't say his last name, Olafilu, whatever his name is. He just kind of ran down their throat. But I don't think Cooper will let that happen again. So it'd be interesting to see if TA changes anything. That became their calling card in the fourth quarter, but. I think they could probably throw the ball with a little bit of success too. They've got some great athletes. The Peyton Jones kid is kind of unmatched athletically for any receiver in the state. So, it's as a coach, I love to watch the kind of strategy that goes into these games. And Coop and all 8 of those guys are there for a reason. They're great, strategic minds, and it'll be fun to see what they roll out. But most people say TA, but I think Bonnie Eagle's got a really legitimate chance. Yeah.
This is the first year, Drew, that really I can think of that TA's had more than maybe 1 or 2 close games this year. They had the 1-point win over Marshwood, a 1-point win, I think, in overtime over Scarborough in the regular season. Close game with Bonnie Eagle. Mm-hmm. To kind of piggyback on what Coach said, do you feel like TA might be vulnerable this year?
Vulnerable in terms of, I give Bonnie Eagle plenty of a shot this game versus last year. It just felt like the
game was over quickly.
The championship game had already been played, and it was just a coronation. Because sometimes there's a difference between simple and easy. Something might be simple but not easy, and I feel like Thornton there, especially if we're looking at that first matchup. Just stop the power run. Simple, and it's not necessarily easy. It's you might know plenty well going in what to do, but it's another thing to do it. But I like that point that you brought up about it's a really good coaching staff at Bonnie Eagle. It's an experienced coaching staff in this game, in the state championship environment, and there are plenty of examples where you point to those sorts of coaches learning from that first matchup and learning what they need to get better at and what maybe they underutilized the first time that they can then put a bigger emphasis on going in. So I don't know if I'll go all in picking Bonnie Eagle, but I definitely think it's going to be a really close game. Both teams have more than good enough of a chance to win this game.
I think this probably has the best chance to be the closest game on Saturday.
I think so. Yeah.
I got Marshwood Brunswick being close. Well, I think the last 2 we talked about are close. Yeah.
Well,
I think Marshwood Brunswick's close for a long time, if not all 4 quarters. I
hope you're right. It's been a while since we've had more than maybe one close game during the day. Everyone, thinks of the blowouts last year, and we forget the great game between Nokomis and Freiburg Academy. That was 13-12.
So are we going to get your picks, official picks, or is that we have to wait for the Friday edition?
I think we got to wait for Friday because I haven't made them yet.
All right. Drew, come on. Give me a pick. You taking Bonney Eagle or Thornton? Come on.
I'm going Thornton.
All right, I'll go Bonney Eagles because I can't go against Kevin Cooper.
Good. Well, who could?
He's undefeated.
Yes, that's pretty good.
And then, Marshwood, Brunswick. I just can't go against Marshwood.
Yeah, I don't know if I would take Brunswick. I just think it's going to be a better game than most people think. And Marshwood, I think Marshwood might be the very best team in all of the state. I mean, I think they almost proved that. I know they didn't beat Thornton, but I just think Brunswick has got a chance this time around because this is Brunswick. It's not their last chance, but I think that's a really good senior group of skilled kids leaving. I feel like they were kind of geared up for this year, even last year when they made it. They were like, we're pretty good this year, but we're going to be great next year, and they've proven to be. So I think they've had their eye on this game for a couple of years, and I think they'll keep it close for a while and maybe pull off what would be a shocker.
All right. Before we go, we want to congratulate Mount Ararat for winning the inaugural 8-man championship last week over Old Orchard Beach. I think we all agree this was a good thing for Maine football, and it's going to grow next year.
Yeah, I like what we were hearing coming out of this league that the teams were considering it a worthwhile move. They liked what the 8-man product looked like. I finally got a chance to see it for myself with that Mount Ararat Maranacook playoff game a couple weeks ago, and it looked really exciting. It looked good. You forget that it's when you're up close. You forget that it's 8-man. It looks like football. It doesn't look like
it is football.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there are players missing all over the place. It's so we'll see which teams do it next year. But it definitely looks like year one was a good step for that.
And it's going to expand, right? Don't we think teams are going to?
Well, we've heard Dirigo already said they're going to do it after they dropped after one game this year. You hope that Orono considers it. We keep hearing that they have these great classes coming up, but. At the same time, last year they had to stop some games midstream, and this year they couldn't make a go. So that's another school that should consider it.
Yeah, 5 to 8 teams maybe that are feeling like especially because of the success it had, the way it was covered by you guys, and the way that it was hyped up for Skip Capone was all over Twitter saying get down here and first ever state championship for class for 8-man football. So. If it had been kind of like, put on the back burner, let's not even talk about, Mount Ararat won. It wasn't like that. It was covered really thoroughly. And so if you're a coach that's been struggling, you go, hey, maybe this, gets us there for a couple of years and we're back to 11-man. So I think it's going to expand, this year and maybe for a few years.
All right. Well, that's it for us for this season. We thank you for joining us all year. We hope you enjoy the high school football championship games this weekend. For Drew, for Coach Lippert, I'm Travis. Thanks for another season of Gridiron Gurus.